know how to get the video back on?
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, good. Looks good. Looks very good. All right, and your audio's on, so I'm sure they're coming back in about 1 minute.
Should be now.
Yeah. Yep, okay. I'm going.
Hi.
Sam, we just have to be quiet for about 30 seconds of silence. Good afternoon and welcome. It's my great joy and privilege to welcome back our dear, dear friend, Dr. Sam Adler. When Sam first agreed to do one interview, we said, let's talk about your 95 years of making music and building bridges. We did that in January of 2024. Sam was then a young man of 95. Since then, we've had 2 more talks. He's had his 96th birthday. And now when you see him, you see he's heading to 97, but he doesn't look anywhere near that. Sam has left a legacy that is unparalleled. He's built bridges between countries, between faiths, between musical concepts and ideas. And I guess we were wrong to think that we could capture everything in 1 hour. I don't think we'll capture everything at the end of this 4th hour. So Sam, I wanted to let everybody know that if we don't capture everything, he now has just re-released his book, Building Bridges with Music. And that's so much of what Sam has done. And today, He's going to not only share his years in Juilliard and his years back in Germany, but he's going to talk about what he sees as the future of music. What's the legacy that he hopes young people and all generations will take from him? What are his thoughts about what's currently going on in the musical field and the optimism that I know he has for the future? So without me taking any more screen time, Sam, welcome back. Thank you so much for all that you have given all of us at Arts Empowering Life over all these decades, and being willing to share your story, your life, and your journey with us. So let's go ahead and you take it from your Juilliard years, which is where we left after the last interview.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, whatever it is where you are. I'm delighted to be back. We left off at Juilliard. It was 1997 that Joe Polisi called me and asked me if I were interested in teaching at Juilliard after 30 years at Eastman, and then in between 1 year having a chair at Ithaca College, and the next year a chair at the University of Utah. I went 1 month to each of those universities for a year. I thought maybe retirement might be good. However, when I was asked to go and come to Juilliard, I said, I can't resist that. So in January 1997, I started at Juilliard, and we had I had four colleagues, Milton Babbitt, John Coliano, Robert Beezer, and Chris Rouse. And we got along famously. I knew Chris very well because I gave him his first job at Eastman. And in the meantime, he had won the Pulitzer Prize, and he went to Juilliard after Eastman. Milton Babbitt I had known for a very, very long time, but not as intimately as I did when we taught together at Juilliard, and I'll tell you about that a little later. John Coliano I knew because he had such a wonderful reputation. I feel he's one of our great composers, and so is Bob Beezer, whom I did not know, but we got to be all four friends. Now, Milton Babbitt became a very special friend. The interesting thing is that our music was completely different one from the other. He was, of course, one of the few American composers who was absolutely into the 12-tone system, even more organized than the 12-tone system. But we became also personal friends. And every week on Monday, I went into Juilliard on Saturday, taught on Sunday and Monday, came home on Tuesday, and Monday night, it was my great privilege to have dinner with Milton Babbitt. And I didn't know him very well, but I got to know him very well. So on Monday night, we always went to the same Chinese restaurant for two reasons. One, it was very cheap. Two, the great professor always got a glass of hot sake as soon as we came in. This was something that you could not take away from him. So we always went there. And one of the interesting things is he was so wedded to going to that restaurant that no other restaurant would do, for those two reasons, but also because it was very close and we could walk there within 5 minutes.
You know, Sam, I love the fact that you and Milton wrote in completely different styles. But you built a bridge. You were able to sort of say that doesn't.
Tell you, I never wrote a piece after that without showing it to him, and he always made wonderful comments. We had such a great relationship, and it wasn't just eating together, but his wisdom enriched my life more than I can ever tell you.
That's such a great takeaway for me too. It's like, how can I assist somebody else in their language, not put my language into them?
For instance, I did an arrangement of the F minor Brahms sonata, one of his last pieces, which is for clarinet and piano, or for viola and piano. I made a viola concerto out of it for the Pittsburgh Symphony, and and I played it for him, and he said, Sam, only you could do that. Well, of course, somebody else, Barrio, also did it. He did it for clarinet. I did it for viola. But, to get the okay from somebody who loved Brahms, it's very interesting. Here's a man writing 12-tone music, and his favorite composer is Brahms. So Schoenberg's favorite composer was Brahms also. At any rate, I want to tell a very funny story. Later on, I'm going to tell you about teaching in Berlin in the summers. And I was teaching in Berlin in the mid 21st century, well, in the first 10 years of the 21st century. And all of a sudden, I get a call from Milton. I thought, oh my God, something is wrong with him. I called him back and I said, Milton, is there anything wrong? He said, yes, something terrible has happened. I said, what? I mean, he was almost 90 years old. And I said, what's wrong? He said, our Chinese restaurant has closed. Major event, and I calmed him down. I said, well, we'll find another restaurant. Well, we never did. Emily, my wife, came to New York at the end of her semester, and when Juilliard overlapped, we took him out to dinner. Never found a restaurant that he liked. And we went to very expensive restaurants. No good. They're too expensive, and the food is not as good as our restaurant, where the highest price was $6.95.
Oh my goodness.
It was a real
Oh my
cheap
goodness.
thing. But anyway, besides that, I just learned so much from this wonderful man. Of course, he's passed away since. But the four of us, with myself making five, had a wonderful relationship on the Juilliard faculty. And my teaching there for 20 years was a terrific experience. The one thing that I need to tell you that wasn't as wonderful an experience was the travel. So we live in Perrysburg, Ohio, which is the southernmost suburb of Toledo, Ohio. Well, there is an airport in Toledo which used to have 6 airlines, including US Air, which no longer exists, was taken over by, I think, first Northwest and then Delta, or American. And US Air used to go from Toledo to Pittsburgh, New York. Very easy trip. Terrific. Couple of years after I started that, they stopped it and they were sold to American and stopped that route. Well, Delta was going Toledo to Cincinnati, New York. Wonderful every week. That stopped. Then it was Toledo on Delta to the very nice airport, which is a hub for Delta in Detroit. And I did that, and then went from there to New York. Then that was ridiculous because it took 17 minutes for that flight, so they cut it out after a year. So I had to drive to Detroit and fly to New York. Actually, it took longer to go from to the airport in New York to Juilliard than it did fly from Detroit to New York. So that was what we usually call a schlep.
Yes, and that's what, most people are starting to think about retirement at that point in their careers, but not you.
Oh,
You've
as a
done
matter of
more
fact,
vigorous travel.
I just enjoyed my students so much, and they were so talented. I'm going to talk about them a little later because they were also not only talented, but very entrepreneurial, which I think is today a very important thing.
Yeah, that will be really good, something to circle back on at the end about
Yeah.
what you think about that.
I'm going to do that. Now, interestingly enough, in 2002, I had the great privilege of being inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Letters. This is the most distinguished academy. It only at that time had 45 composers, and I was very privileged to become a member and have been a member since. It has been an incredible experience. I've been on many committees and so on and so forth. Now that I don't travel anymore, I only get it online, which is perfectly okay. But the idea of the academy is to further both music, literature, art, um, uh, architecture, and the art means also painting and sculpture and so on. And literature also means poetry and all kinds of literature. It's a very distinguished group of people. And every time we meet together, I meet people that you can only read about in books. And that is such a great experience. I'm sorry to say I can't go there anymore because for that I'm too old. But I get there online, so that's okay. In '02, I was inducted into the American Academy. In '03, I received a letter from the American Academy in Berlin, and I didn't know anything about them. And it has an interesting history. The American Academy in Berlin uh, was founded in the year 1994 by the then ambassador to Germany from the US, Richard Holbrooke, with the then Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger. And they wanted to promote a relationship between Germany and the US. And a house, I really should say a mansion, was given to them in one of the most beautiful districts of Berlin, at the Wannsee, which is a most gorgeous piece of water that one has ever seen. And it's where a lot of the very wealthy Jewish families built mansions in the 1920s. And this mansion was built by a family whose name was Arnhold. And this family was a banking family, as by the way, of course, were the Mendelssohns and the Meyerbeers many years before then. But the Arnholds had to give up the mansion in 1938, excuse me, 37, and had to move, came to America, became just as wealthy as they were in Germany. And their house was taken over by the Nazis and made a club for officers of the German army. And it became that. It is, I want to say, it's like being in paradise. It's so beautiful. Well, after the war, in 1994, it was returned to the Arnhold family, who gave it to Richard Holbrooke in order to found the American Academy, which invites 14 fellows for 6 months every year from fall and also one class in the spring. Well, I had a letter from them, would I like to come in the spring to do a residency? And they have one composer in each session. So I said, well, I'd be delighted to. And Emily and I went there, and they've made this big mansion into 14 little apartments. Absolutely wonderful. And if I may say so, they have their old chef, who is probably one of the best in the world. For coffee in the morning, you also have a chocolate croissant, which is better than any in Paris. So this was a terrific place to be. And all you had to do, you do your own work. I was able to compose a great deal. And besides that, you have to give one lecture about a subject that you want to talk about. And I had been looking at composition programs in Germany and in Europe as a whole. And I found it was very different from our idea of composition programs. And my lecture was about teaching composition. Well, after my lecture, a young man came up to me and said, Mr. Adler, I would like to have you teach a course here at the Free University where I run the summer program. Why don't we have American students come here and you teach the course, and I will have professors from the different universities in Europe come and view what you're doing. Well, I said, tell me more about it, and and he corresponded quite a bit. A year later, I started a program at the Free University for 14 American students every summer, and it was called the Free University Summer Program. And we had a terrific response by American students going to Berlin, and all of them had the time of their life. Berlin is the greatest city for music. It has 3 opera companies going until the 1st of August. And so during June and July, when we were teaching there, they could go to an different opera every night. They also have 7 professional orchestras. They have 8 professional choirs. So the scene in Berlin is incredible.
That leaves me with a few questions, Sammy. One, it's amazing. Of course, we talked about your story and how you left Germany in such a horrific way at Kristallnacht, and then went back with the orchestra right after the war. And now here you are in Berlin as a fellow teaching composition to young Americans coming to Germany. And were your students, what would be their requirements for the summer program that they would have to do for you?
Well, I mean, I always looked at their compositions, and only very talented students were accepted. And the interesting thing is, after about 3 years, a couple of them came up to me and said, your wife is a conductor, and we really should learn how to conduct, because sometimes we're called upon to conduct our own pieces. So Emily said, oh, sure. And on Wednesday afternoons for 3 hours, they would have conducting. And it was just the greatest experience. And we did it for 11 years.
Wow.
And never had a lack of attendance. They were always new people, and they were from all over. And we tried to have everybody come only once. And we had special privileges with the Berlin Philharmonic, with the other orchestras, also with the operas. They got tickets for $5, you know. It was just terrific.
That's wonderful cultural exchange.
I mean, they had the greatest experience. And, you know, I still hear from a lot of the students who have gone to Berlin with us. And that was a wonderful experience, not only for us, but for the students. The idea of cultural relations goes right into the idea of building bridges.
Yes.
Because this academy builds bridges in this following way. Every one of the people who is in residence has to be engaged in doing research of things between relations between Germany and the US. And so you get economists, you get scientists, all kinds of people who have relations with both countries. And it is the most wonderful thing. And it's very well endowed, both by the Arnold family, who gave the mansion, and by other people. They give prizes. They give a Kissinger Prize. They give an Arnold Prize to the different people who are in residence there. And we met the most interesting folks, who left their job here in America to go over there for 3-4 months and work in Berlin, and write books about their content of work in the Berlin area. It was a life-changing experience, and another one, I would say.
Yeah, you've had so many of them, and it's amazing to me. I was 70, I was 80, and I learned from the best of the best, and you're still learning.
By the way, one of the people who was a resident there is now the president of the academy, and we are still in touch very much. And he worked for the State Department, and if you ever get to Berlin, you have to go to the Wannsee, which is that beautiful lake. And I tell you, it's an interesting thing that I need to say, and that is our room looked right into the lake. And across the lake was the house where Himmler and the Nazis decided on the final solution. Mm. And every morning I could get up and look at that and think to myself, they're all dead, I'm still alive. Great feeling, I have to say. And it was really a wonderful thing. At any rate, I felt good about being in Berlin for 11 years and made so many friends among the musical community and the general arts community, and also with the ever-growing and quite interesting Jewish community, which is gathering steam in Berlin, as in many German cities. I'm going to talk about that a little later, about my hometown, Mannheim, which has also interesting developments. However, there's one more thing I want to say about Berlin, and that is the most beautiful synagogue that I've ever seen in Europe is in Berlin, the Rickerstraße Synagogue. And I was privileged to be asked, when it was redone and also inaugurated again, to be the music director. And they gave me the most wonderful course, the Radio Symphony Orchestra course of Berlin, to use as the course. And boy, I want to tell you, we did a program like nobody can do. Only Gloria Dei in Orleans can do better.
Yes. Oh, goodness. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a wonderful experience. And in the meantime, of course, we had terrific family experiences with our daughter Naomi's three boys and our son-in-law, Brian Beal. They had the oldest boy was bar mitzvah. And what was so incredible was that he was assigned the same portion that I was for my bar mitzvah 100 years before. That was quite something. And then, of course, 3 years later, the twins were bar mitzvah, and this was a great thrill for Emily and me to see these young people doing so well. And now they're doing so well, and not even the twins not even graduated from college have a job offered to them. And the older boy also has a job, and he graduated from Tulane, Phi Beta Kappa. Very proud of those kids.
Well, it sounds like they had the good tree that the fruit dropped from, Sam. So
let's hope for the best. They're wonderful boys, and I, of course, wish them very, very well. Now I want to say a word about my relationship to Gloria Dei.
thank you.
I think it's very important because I've written so much music for Gloria Dei. One day I get a call from Mother Betty Patterson. I did not know
Elizabeth Patterson, yes.
Yeah. And she called and said, we're going to give a prize to 3 composers that we think have given a lot to sacred music in America. Dan Pinkham, Robert Starr, and you. Would you come and accept the prize? I said, of course, wonderful. And Emily and I went to Orleans on the Cape and had a terrific weekend. Dan Pinkham was there. And by the way, when I was a student at Harvard, I used to play on Sunday morning in his ensemble because he used to use strings on Sunday morning, and I was always engaged as a violist. And we had a great reunion. Then the other thing was that I'm sorry to say, Bob Starr, who had been a friend of mine for a long time, a wonderful composer, was too sick to come. But the choir sang several of my pieces better than I had ever heard them before. And ever since then, and now with Richard Pugsley, we just did a couple of huge projects, one of which won first prize last year for the best recorded sacred music album in America. And it's been a terrific relationship all these years. Now I want to switch, if I may, to a couple of relationships which were very important for me in the past 25 years. One was very unexpected with the orchestra and the city of Mannheim, where I was born. Don't forget, we were tossed out unceremoniously in 1938. We left in 39, my father in 38. And suddenly, in 1992, I got a call from the president of the orchestra of the Nationaltheater of the Opera, which was also the orchestra of the symphony. And he said, look, Mr. Adler, his name was Teichmann. He was also a cellist in the orchestra. He said, we have a strange case here. We have an ensemble, a woodwind quintet that won the first prize in the Munich competition. And they, as one of the perks, they were going to play a concert with us. But what is there for woodwind quintet and orchestra? There are some minor pieces of the 19th century, none of which they like. And there is, of course, the very famous one by Mozart, but it doesn't have a flute, and they want to use their flute also. Would you be open to writing a piece for woodwind quintet and orchestra? I said, wow, that's great. And I accepted the commission. And he said, the name of the people who are going to play it, the quintet, is Ma'alot, a Hebrew name for a German quintet. I said, well, how does this happen? He said, well, you can correspond with the oboist and he will tell you. So I did. And he said they all graduated from the Cologne Conservatory. And outside of the conservatory is a statue of by an Israeli artist called Ma'alot, striving upward. And of course, you have Shir HaMalot, the songs of striving upward, the Psalms, the 10 Psalms between 121 and I think 134, so it's more than 10 Psalms. But anyway, the other thing is that Shir HaMalot is the prayer that is sung at the beginning if you do the prayer after the meal, traditionally. And so I called the piece Shir HaMa'alot, the Song of Ascent. And they played it, the most fantastic performance in Mannheim. They played it twice, 2 concerts, and Emily and I went and had a great experience with a Spanish conductor conducting it very, very well. And he gave an introduction, and he introduced me, and you could hear a sigh of relief because he was really hard to understand. And when I started, I talked like those people, you know. It was very funny. People said, oh my God, he's from Mannheim. You know,
Man, hey,
have
Sam,
that accent.
Sam, I love that concept of striving upwards. Could you explain just a little bit more about what that is? It just I'm fascinated by that, thinking about
Well, I
different.
mean, the Psalms, of course, start with I lift mine eyes unto the mountains and go on in that way. And so I felt I would like to write a piece for an organization that calls itself Ma'alot, the Song of Ascent.
Fantastic.
And they played it quite a few times, and I'm happy to say Emily made a commercial recording of it for my 90th birthday. So it's now commercially recorded, and it has been done in America, especially a beautiful performance by the St. Louis Symphony with Leonard Slatkin conducting. And you can use your wind quintet from the orchestra because the wind quintet doesn't exist in the orchestra. All the instruments but the wind quintet exist.
That's so like you. It's also practical.
Practical.
It's a good piece of music and it's practical. You can do it.
Practical, of course. Yeah. So you know, and I want to follow up on that. Not only did I write that for Mannheim, but I had a call actually from the music director of the largest Protestant church in Mannheim, whose name is Johannes Michel, a wonderful organist. And he said, we'd like you to write a large cantata. My father had written a cantata on the book of Jonah, and I always loved it. And I loved the book of Jonah. So I asked him if he would accept a whole cantata on the book of Jonah from beginning to end. And he said, wonderful. And he conducts the Bach choir of Mannheim, which is 150 voices, and they use orchestra. So I wrote a piece for orchestra, 3 soloists, and chorus, and we went to hear the first performance. Well, in order to be nice to the guy, we thought we would go to morning services at the church, just to see what goes on. It's a beautiful church and it's huge. By the way, it's 3 blocks from where I grew up, and a beautiful church. And it seats 1,700 people. And we went in the morning, and there were 25 old women in the audience. Well, I thought, oh my goodness, what's going to happen this afternoon? Nobody's going to come. Well, we took the music director, who's also, of course, the organist, to lunch. And I said, Johannes, what's going to happen? I mean, you had 25 people. He said, Sam, we sell tickets for the afternoon at 10 euros, and it's all sold out. So he said, look, I'm sorry to say, in Europe, there is a paucity of people going to church in the morning. But everybody comes to a concert in the afternoon. So we have a concert every afternoon on Sundays. We have organ recitals, we have vocal recitals, we have choral recitals, and so on, which was really an eye-opener, And so that was the second piece I wrote for Mannheim. And I got another call to write a piece for the National Symphony Orchestra, which is the opera orchestra, as I said before, which also does symphony things. They wanted a dance suite. Well, my mother used to love to dance. My father was a terrible dancer, so she danced with everybody else. But she loved to dance. And one of her favorite expressions was, one lives but once, and therefore dance.
Love that.
I wrote a piece for the orchestra, a dance suite called Man lebt nur einmal, one lives but once. And it's sort of taken off. It's 5 dances for orchestra alone. That's the next piece I wrote for Mannheim. And then the 4th piece actually was asked for by the mayor of Mannheim, who has become a very good friend. His name is Dr. Kurz, which means short, but he's over 6 feet tall. So, we've become good friends. And Dr. Kurz said, we're going to be 400 years old. Would you write a piece for Blasorchester, which means wind ensemble? And so I wrote a piece, Long Shall She Prosper, for wind ensemble. And we went again, and they had a terrific conductor and did a wonderful job. There are 85 people, all volunteers in this wind ensemble, which leads me to one of the things I want to say at the end. And that is, you see, I feel that we in America, and maybe all over the world, should encourage people who are retired and older people to keep up their instruments, especially, if they played an instrument in college or in high school and so on. Do something after you retire. Play music. It doesn't have to be the New York Philharmonic or the Berlin Philharmonic or the Eastman Wind Ensemble. Just play for the love of playing. By the way, as you probably know, having been in Rochester, we started 2 bands for senior citizens.
The New Horizons groups. Yeah. Those were fabulous groups.
Going wonderful. wonderfully. And I wish that we would do that all over the country and maybe all over the world, because that would give new meaning to retirement. You know, I mean, what are you going to do when you retire?
Yeah.
Are you just going to sit down and pass away? Or are you going to do something that will enliven your soul?
I mean, retirement is probably a bad word. It just, you're just going to do something different, explore different cultures, enrich your life in a different way.
That's right. And music can really help.
Yeah.
I mean, you can start reading, which is very important, but also very important is the idea of doing something for your soul, which is playing music, and play the piano again. Even in my old age, I try to play the piano every day because I think it's good for my fingers, but it's also good for my nature, you know, to be able to play the piano very badly because I was always a fiddle player and always rebelled because my father was such a good pianist. And I'm happy to say that every day while I was home, my father and I played sonatas for 2 hours. And
Did you play the viola? You played viola and he played
I played the violin then, but the viola I only played because somebody made me. And that leads me to the next story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I wrote a viola concerto for the Pittsburgh Symphony um, uh, for the principal violist of the orchestra, uh, whose name was Kelly, and he's now retired. But one day, Randy called Emily and said, "Look, our concertmaster and I are going to play the Mozart Symphony Concerton next season, and he and I have never played it together. Could we try it out with your orchestra?" Well, she said, "When are you coming?" So he said, "Well, his name is Noah Bendick-Spalgli, and Noah is away, but he'll be back next week, and I'll ask him and we'll make a date." Well, the next day, we looked in the Times, and they had a big announcement that Noah Bendick-Spalgli has just been appointed first concertmaster of the Berlin Philharmonic. Well, Emily said, "He's not going to come here." So she called and she said to Kelly, "No, I'm sure they're not going." He said, "Don't be too sure. I'll ask him when he comes back." And when he came back, he said, "Yes, I'd like to do that." So he and Randy came, and we had dinner after they played the Mozart fantastically. And he said, "Sam, I want to ask you a question. The Pittsburgh Symphony has commissioned me to write a klezmer violin concerto." Now, the reason was that I want to write a klezmer concerto is because I grew up with that music. I didn't, but he did, because his father, who lives in North Carolina and he grew up there, is a teacher of klezmer dancing. So he really, that was in his blood. And he said, "I can write the violin part and sort of sketch things for the piano to do, but I can't orchestrate it. Do you have a student who you think could do that?" I said, "No, I don't have a student. I'll do it for you." Well, I'm very happy that I did, because he's played the piece with over 20 orchestras worldwide. And we had a terrific experience 4 years ago, just before the pandemic. We went to Berlin. No, excuse me, it was after the pandemic. We went to Berlin, and the Berlin Philharmonic, with him at the head, without conductor, did 3 of my pieces in the same concert, including the klezmer concerto. I had written during the pandemic some pieces for my friends in the Berlin Philharmonic. One for him and the principal violist, Amichai Gross, one of the great violists, and they played that. And then another piece for the principal bassoon and the principal oboe. The principal oboe couldn't do it, but the English horn player, also a great oboist, they did it. So they did these two pieces first, and then they played the klezmer concerto. It was a dream experience.
That Sam, I'm encouraged by your testimony of you're writing these pieces in your 90s. Do you still, when you wake up every day, are you still working your craft? Are you still composing?
Well, I did until about a month ago. I'm taking a month off.
Taking a month off. Yeah.
No,
I think you've earned that.
Well, I've written so much during the pandemic, because what does a composer do during a pandemic? He has to stay home. What does he do? Write music. It's very dangerous. Meanwhile, the Eastman School had its 100th anniversary, and they commissioned an orchestra piece and a wind ensemble piece. I wrote those two, and it's been a great experience to write music. And the idea of keeping going is very important at this stage.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you don't, then life is not worth living.
Yeah.
Now, I want to end this session. We could go on for a few
Yeah,
hours.
no. This is great. This is so encouraging to me.
I do want to say that I've had such terrific students, and they have been very entrepreneurial. I mean, I have a student who writes an opera for the Metropolitan, Kevin Putz. And I have a student, Michael Isaacson, who is probably the most important, to me, the most important composer of Jewish sacred music today. But he doesn't only write sacred music. He went to Hollywood and did a lot of movie scores and so on. So I mean, another woman writes for video games, So there are all these composers that are doing such wonderful work. Another composer has written 5 operas for the Philadelphia Opera. So I see these kids growing into the most important people on the musical scene. And I have felt that my philosophy of teaching has worked out. And number one is, when you get a student, don't right away say, you've got to change your style. Take them from what they're at in their own way. And that has been very successful. Taking them from what they're doing into the next step that you think they can take, but not changing their style radically, just thinking of a larger world. And also the entrepreneurial idea of being able to do things for the whole world, I have a student, Paola Prestini, who has founded Sawdust, which is a place in New York, and she does things she brings in young composers, young artists and everything, and does things that nobody else ever thought of. And this is the kind of thing that I have always encouraged, because this builds bridges to the rest of the world. And it can be done through music. I have a student, Todd Frazier, who is down in Houston. His father is a very distinguished heart surgeon and took Dr. DeBakey's place, also has come up with a new artificial heart. But Todd has taken over this huge hospital and does every day, has somebody do a recital on every floor. He has people singing. He has people doing all kinds of things. He has introduced music therapy, which I think is a great step at healing the world.
Amen. Amen. I'm with you.
Yeah, and we don't do enough of it. We don't think of it enough. And I feel that this is really a very important thing which we need to do. Because if we don't, then we're not doing our duty. The other thing about teaching composition is you have to try all the time to grow yourself and that your students see that there is no place of stopping. You don't just write music and say, okay, this is my style, this is what I do. When I look at the many, maybe too many pieces that I've written, I see the other day, Emily said, well, let's listen to your Sixth Symphony, which is wonderfully recorded on Lynn Records by Jose Cerebrier. And it was done by the Royal Scottish Symphony Orchestra in Glasgow. And I want to tell one more story about that. It is the wildest piece you've ever heard. Well, okay, the next symphony is just the opposite. So what are you doing? Who are you? Well, I don't care. As long as you're not writing the same piece over and over again.
Yeah, love that. I love that.
But I want to tell about Lynn Records. We have, they also, besides being a record company, they make the best recording equipment and speakers in the world. We have two, and they gave us the family rates because we couldn't afford the actual rates. And while we were in Glasgow, which is a lovely city, they took us to their factory, which is the factory of the future. They have 120 people working, making by hand all the recording equipment. And every morning at 6 o'clock, they have 25 robots that go around to each workstation, putting everything that that person will need for the rest of the day on the workstation. So when the person comes in at 8:30, everything is there, and the robots have gone back to their place, and it is the most miraculous thing I've ever seen. I thought it was so unbelievable, but that's the way things are going to be for the future.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about it. This is certainly something that is happening.
Yeah.
We, I'm happy to say, have two of the speakers that they so nicely gave us a prize on, and it is the experience of our life to listen every week to a concert from the digital concert hall of the Berlin Philharmonic on these speakers, because it's like being in the hall, and that hall is something to be in.
Yeah. Hey, Sam, we have about 5 minutes left. And you talked about, the factory with the robots and, the future. Could you just give a little thought of what do you see the future of classical music, orchestral music, sacred music? What do you see?
In the first place, the idea of classical music being dead is ridiculous.
Good.
We have the most fabulous ensembles, the most fabulous soloists, the most fabulous young composers. Whether you like their music or not, that's no concern. But we have a lot of very talented people in classical music that are contributing terrific things to the classical music programs all over the world. We have them here in America. Unfortunately, we celebrate pop music much more than we do the other.
Right.
The other thing is about sacred music. There are not enough choruses like Gloria Dei Cantores. Too many churches and synagogues have nothing but pop music. And as far as I'm concerned, it's very difficult for me to go to a service which means something to me as far as the words are concerned, and hearing it as if it were an entertainment. Worship is not an entertainment, it's worship. And you need the very best of music. Well, you could say, look at Bach. Everybody hated the music. That's fine, except he wrote it. And we can now listen to that music and get so inspired by it. Not only Bach, but Handel and everybody else wrote. I mean, when you listen to the Verdi Requiem, the Verdi was not even a very religious man, but when he wrote a Requiem, he wrote his best. They all wrote the Brahms German Requiem is one of the most inspiring pieces. Or you hear Mendelssohn's Psalms or the Elijah, which always, if I had one more piece to conduct again, it would be the Elijah, which I just love because that man really felt something about the text. And so I feel we must not give up. We are responsible for the idea that things are dead and this and that because we don't advertise enough. You know, we should pound the table and see that it gets out. And I think we lay back too much. Now you don't, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Paul, and your team, because I've had a wonderful time doing these 4 lectures, and I hope that you will take it as a great compliment because I think you're doing the most wonderful job with this new edifice. It's really amazing what you're doing, and you must be congratulated for it. And I am very grateful to have been part of it.
Well, thank you so much, Sam. I'm always humbled talking to you. I'm always inspired, actually, to serve the music, serve the people, serve. Anyway, thank you so much. It's been a privilege, and I hope people that have tuned in, or if they're tuning in afterwards, please go back and watch the first 3 because Sam's life and story and testimony is so intriguing. Again, he's heading towards 97 with joy, looking ever upwards, and everything you talk about is optimistic to me, Sam.
Good. I am optimistic.
And this, of course, I know we didn't capture everything, but his legacy is recorded in his book, Building Bridges. Get his book, buy his recordings.
Beautifully published, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of it, and I thank you very much again.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will talk more. I know it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.